It is indeed a great pleasure for me to be here. And I should add that this pleasure is both tinged with nostalgia and satisfaction. Nostalgia because in this room in 2018, in the month of May, I believe around the 20th of May, we had the first technical deep dive on age-ready cities. At that time, it was considered to be a very novel idea, and people looked at us a little oddly, thinking, why would you bring 100 people in to Japan to think about what? Age-ready cities? What is that? And we considered that what we call a frontier topic. 4 years later, well, right after that technical deep dive, there was a lot of energy, enthusiasm, and discussion, both within the World Bank and within our clients, about what it means to be age-ready and why age-ready is so important. We were then advised to do a global report to focus on age readiness in the built environment, something that had not been done before. Today, in May 2022, it is a great honor and pleasure for me to be back as also the manager of the Tokyo Development Learning Center, as well as one of the authors of this report, to present this before you. So it is the life comes a full circle on this. You see the report outside. I'd like to start by acknowledging my team. Yuko Arai, we have Vibhu Jain, and we have Terry Chapman, who's not here right now. We together, this has been a labor of love. And we have taken the last 1 year in really trying to refine the messages of this report that I will share with you now. You saw in the introductory video, this moment that we have right now is a moment in history that has never happened before. There are more people in the world above the age of 65 than there are children under the age of 5. Let's understand what the importance of this development means. This development means that there are a lot more older people than there are young kids. There are a lot less people having children and a lot more people living longer. So in demographic terms, life expectancy is high, fertility is low across the board. There's another demographic development that is taking place simultaneously. The UN Population Prospect calls this a megatrend. The megatrend is urbanization. When these two megatrends of aging and urbanization come together, you are seeing a very defined moment again in history where this intersection is leading to very interesting challenges, but also opportunities for countries and cities. But there is a heterogeneity. There is a diversity in aging. Take a look at the graph in front of you. The yellow line right at the top is Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Aging, almost 25%, sometimes more than 25% of their population is aged. It's true for Japan as well, but broadly as a region, Eastern Europe and Central Asia are leading the way, followed by East Asia and the Pacific, Latin America and the Caribbean. You find Sub-Saharan Africa has a very small proportion of persons over the age of 60 and 65, and that they are not aging at such a rapid rate. Middle East and North Africa, South Asia region are at a lower level, but their rate of aging, their pace of aging is very fast. So this graph actually shows you the manner and the diversity of aging across the world. It is also true for urbanization. Again, in cities or in countries of Central Asia and Eastern Europe, as well as Latin America and the Caribbean, and many parts of the East Asia and Pacific region, Japan in particular, rates of urbanization are very, very high. So Japan, for instance, is almost 80% urbanized, but as I was having a conversation with Dr. Hayashi the other day, it depends on how you classify urban, and it could actually be a higher rate of persons living in urban areas. Take a look at Sub-Saharan Africa. Today, the rate of urbanization, the level of urbanization is not as high, but the pace of urbanization is very fast. There's also an interesting gendered nature of aging. And this is because women women live longer than men do. So It's a biological fact that women live longer, and so at the oldest ages, you find a lot more women than you do men. This has policy implications for women's savings over their lifetime, as well as their access to land and property if they are to be leading a life of fulfillment in their older ages, once their husbands are no more. Japan has actually showed us the way. So if you look at the two pictures on the right side, those two pictures are intended to be what we demographers call population pyramids. But as Dr. Hayashi will attest to, there's never going to be population pyramids again. Population pyramids are gone. You see a jar, and if we don't do something about it, we may see an inverted pyramid. And that is actually a very serious danger. An inverted pyramid means that you have a very large and inflated cohort of older persons and a very, very small cohort of very young people. So why do we need this report? We need this report because globally, the policy literature has focused on three things. First, the policy literature has focused very much on OECD countries and data-rich countries that are often already aging. And there is actually an overlap between more advanced countries and data-rich countries. Rich countries are also data-rich countries. But we don't have enough of a literature on low and middle-income countries. Why does this matter? It matters because we're at the World Bank, and at the World Bank, the majority of our client countries are low and middle-income countries, and we don't have enough material on those. Second, the policy literature has focused at the regional or the national level because data are available at the regional and national level. All too often, you don't have data that go down to the city level. You often don't even have data that go down to the urban level. Okay? So you don't see analysis of population structure and aging at the city level, unless the city itself does something about it. And if the city does something about it, you are not going to see comparability across different cities. So that was the second reason. A third reason is that most of the policy literature on aging has focused on fiscal issues, which means things like the dependency ratio. You know, high dependency ratio means pension payouts are going to be higher. And so what does this mean for the fiscal sustainability, the debt burden of the economy? That's what people have focused on. They're focused on labor market issues and the fact that there's going to be a shortage of labor force. They're focused on care services such as health and social care, but not on the built environment. And that's where we come in as the global practice for urban disaster risk and land. What do we present in Silver Hues? In a very brief sense, I want to say it is a demonstration of possibilities. It is not necessarily it's not based on new empirical evidence. It is based on a review of the existing data and the existing literature as far as the built environment is concerned in terms of age readiness. It also draws, the reason I say it's a demonstration of possibilities is because it draws on examples of innovation across diverse locations. Now, you may ask, there's a term called age-friendly. The WHO has got a very strong program on age-friendly cities. Why do we say age-ready? Well, we say age-ready because we are speaking to those cities, those countries. If you remember those two charts you saw of low and low middle-income countries that are not yet aged and not yet urbanized, what do we say to them? They're not seeing, they don't have a visible sense of older people on the streets, in markets, in homes, because they're not yet aged. They see a lot more younger people, and they have issues around unemployment, around health, around education, and they focus on those. But we want to speak to them because not today, but 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, they will have aged. They will start aging, and some of them will be quite far along as far as aging is concerned. So yes, today, their policy priorities are to do with younger cohorts. but they need to be able to plan for the next 10 years and 20 years. And to them, we say, be age ready. And that's the reason we have coined this term, and we call it age-ready cities. What are the main messages in our report? And I'm going to end my presentation quite soon. First of all, age-ready cities, or cities that are conducive to older persons, are not just for older persons. They are for everybody. Let me give you one example, and it's an example that we have in our report, is that let's think about accessible sidewalks. Let's think about curb cuts. They are important for that older person who is in a wheelchair, but it is also important for young parents who are wheeling their children in strollers. It is also important for that person who's carrying a heavy load, maybe a suitcase, that he or she is wheeling from the metro to their home. It is a city that is for everybody. And that's the reason why we don't say that an age-ready city is for older persons. It's a good city. It's a city for all. Second, there is an overlap between disability and aging. Whereas about 15% of the global population has a disability, in fact, 46% of persons above the age of 60 have a disability. So there is a concentration of disability among older persons, which is not to say that aging is the same as disability, or that disability is the same as aging. It's not to say that at all. It just means that there is an overrepresentation of disability among older populations. And so what's good for an age-ready city is also good for a city for persons with disabilities who may be younger. Third, there are economic and social benefits of building back before aging occurs. And what do I mean by that? There are some studies of some cost-benefit studies, not that many, that actually show that at the time of construction of infrastructure, if you build in accessibility features, it's likely to be much more cost-effective than having to adapt that infrastructure 10 years later, building ramps, building larger elevators, building larger doorways. It is much cheaper to do it today in anticipation of an aging future than to do it after you have suddenly realized, oh my goodness, everything is aging. Fourth, older persons are a large and growing market for goods and services. There is actually a kind of an implicit narrative that conflates aging with poverty. That's not the case. In fact, the world over, especially where there have been pension systems, older persons actually have a strong social security base and savings. And so you're seeing something called the longevity economy, the silver economy. Depending on how you calculate it, it could run into trillions of dollars. And most cities that are dealing with aging are also creating incentives for the private sector and for other innovators, social innovators, to come in and to harness this market that exists. Fifth, and this is related to the fourth point, is that people often think that younger generations are there to take care of older generations. They often believe that the transfer of resources takes place from younger to older. In fact, that's not the case. In some countries, that may be the case, and among some socioeconomic groups, that may be the case. But overall, the intergenerational transfer of resources actually occurs from older to younger persons. And I'm talking about both monetary resources and non-monetary resources, such as providing care for children. Finally, most cities pride themselves on their vision of being cities for all. There's hardly any city that will not have this avowed objective. And so from a political sense as well, having an age-ready city is good political sense. So what kind of a city is age-ready? And I'm going to go through this reasonably quickly. We say that an age-ready city has three elements. It is adaptive. It adapts its existing infrastructure. It is productive, which means it attracts investment by creating the right regulatory and enabling environment. And third, it is an inclusive city, which means it enhances the ability, the opportunity, and the dignity of those persons who are likely to be excluded. We also say that age readiness comes by investing in 6 areas. Age readiness of the built environment comes by investing in 6 areas. Better transportation, efficient spatial forms, so having cities where things are all within a certain area. Making technology work, and we realize that in the context of COVID, we realize how important technology has been for us all, particularly for older persons. Universal design, the principle of universal design was articulated in 1997-1998 by architect Ronald Mace, who basically said universal design is for everybody. Accessibility is for everybody. Housing solutions, affordable housing for older persons. There is a move away now from segregated living to aging in place, and COVID has definitely taught us that nursing homes have been very badly affected by the pandemic. Finally, having multi-generational spaces. This also means not segregating older persons in older person areas, but having areas where there are young persons, older persons, all living and working and relaxing together. Japan's outlook to aging has been one that is often summarized as ikigai. It is life plus value. It is about active aging. It is about not seeing aging as a depressing development, but seeing aging as a natural confluence. And that is something that we bring out in our background paper that is done by Belinda Yuen, which is also outside, and it is on Japan. These are 2 glimpses of, we will be hearing much more about Japan, so I'm not going to dwell on these. You see how a school can be transformed for older persons. You see how spaces can be transformed and made accessible for older persons. Finally, how do we get to age readiness? We get to age readiness by a social contract, because often societies and economies have to make trade-offs. Sometimes an investment that may be an investment that is good for older populations may have to take away from something else a government may have to do, because there is a fiscal constraint. And that fiscal constraint entails that governments have to make decisions, they have to prioritize. So unless there's a social contract towards age readiness, you will see a lot of animosity in societies that are investing for older persons, which are often considered to be at the expense of younger persons, and we are seeing that narrative in some countries. So what we say is build a long-term vision, consult not just with older persons, but with everybody. Focus on the design of not just your projects, but on the design of policies. Put in place systems of implementation and the institutional fabric, mainstream it into the city. You don't have to put in place new initiatives or new institutional mechanisms to deal with aging or to deal with your policies and programs for aging. You can actually mainstream them into the city government. Finally, have a system by which you can monitor, you can evaluate, and you can have feedback loops to make the changes on a real-time basis, because aging is a fluid, ongoing process. It is not static. I will not recap because I'm out of time. The recap was really a recap of everything you've heard. The only big point I'd like you to take away is age readiness is for the whole society. I'm running out of time. I will not read this out. It's from the United Nations Decade of Healthy Aging. And finally, please contact us, follow us on Twitter, and read our report. Thank you very much.